A wonderful day to everyone. My name is Justin Junitiba and I'm from Group 6. And we are going to talk about Unit 8, which is environmental crisis. So, environmental crisis is a long-term threat to Earth's well-being. Consequently, a wide range of environmental problems has emerged, and those are later, me and my group mates will discuss it to you. So, the objectives. So at the end of this unit, students will be able to determine the cause and effect of environmental crisis, explain the different anthropogenic impact on the environment, and create a mitigation plan to combat climate change. So here are the topics. We have four topics to discuss. Topic one is the anthropogenic impact on the environment, greenhouse effect, global warming and climate change, and radioactivity. Overconsumptions and overpopulation underlie every environmental problem we face today. So, because of our greediness and ignorance, we tend to harm our environment. We tend to get what we want without knowing the consequences that we will face after. Aside from that, we multiply ourselves really fast. More population, more resources are being demanded, from food to waste disposal, globalization, and so on. That's why all the climate change that we are facing today is a product that we create a long time ago, that people are continuing to do. So, anthropogenic impact on the environment. So, for topic number one, Ma'am Yabut will take it away.
Thank you, Sir Justin. Now I am Mariel Baltasar and I will be going to discuss the anthropogenic impact on the environment. So, what is anthropogenic impact on the environment? Human activity has been affecting the environment for 1,000 years from the time of our very earliest ancestors. Since Homo sapiens first walked the earth, we have been modifying the environment around us through agriculture, travel, and eventually through urbanization and commercial networks by Harimat as 2016. So, the impact, human impact or anthropogenic impact on the environment includes changes to biophysical environments and ecosystem, biodiversity, and natural resources caused directly or indirectly by humans. Human impact are the effects caused by development, industrial, or by release of substances in the environment, or by any other human activity. This includes global warming, environmental degradation such as ocean acidification, mass extinction, and biodiversity loss, ecological crisis, and ecological collapse. So, I will give you the solution for anthropogenic impact in our environment. Do not travel by air if you can avoid it, because air travel uses up large amounts of fossil fuel and creates greenhouse gases. Dispose of any rubbish responsibly. It can be hazardous to wildlife. Use public transport, cycle, or walk instead of using a car. Use facilities and trips run by local people whenever possible. So next topic is garbage problem. So improper waste disposal is commonly caused of rapid flooding. Oftentimes, garbage that is not properly disposed enter into drainage system and clog drains. A build-up of garbage can also obstruct the natural flow of water in rivers and streams. Soil, water, and air pollution can also be result of improper waste disposal and occurs when either of them becomes contaminated with hazardous materials. So, this is the harmful effect of garbage disposal. Number 1 is diseases and in some cases even death like cholera, dysentery, and leptospirosis are known to be spread through contaminated water and can cause serious health epidemics in a population. Next is soil contamination, which occurs when hazardous chemicals come into contact with the soil. And lastly is also interfere with the food supply as plant growth is impaired, reducing the amount of food produced. So again, I will give you solution for garbage problem. There is a lot of items that we use every day and then get rid of them by throwing them into the garbage. Unfortunately, the result in pile of garbage as we throw old items as well as the packaging of new items. Reducing solid waste is reducing the amount of trash that goes to landfills. Reduce, reuse, and recycle are the most common methods to reduce landfill waste. So, the next topic is deforestation. Deforestation is removal of a forest where the land is thereafter converted to a non-forest use. It has been estimated that around half of the world's mature forest has been cleared by humans. Deforestation occurs for a variety of reasons, but the majority of deforestation now occurs when tropical forests are cleared for agriculture and pastoralism. Other reasons include the destruction of trees for charcoal production and the selective logging of forests for timber. It was estimated that around 90% of the world's species are found in tropical forests. Park 2001. So, there are effect of deforestation. First is loss of habitat. Second is increased greenhouse gases. And third is water in the atmosphere. The loss of trees and other vegetation can cause climate change, desertification, soil erosion, fewer crops, flooding, increased greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and a host of problems for indigenous people. So, the next topic is deforestation in the Philippines. Over the course of the 20th century, the forest cover the Philippines dropped from 70% down to 20%. In total, 46 species are endangered, and 4 were already eradicated completely. 3.2% of total rainforest has been left. Based on the analysis of land use pattern maps and road map, an estimated 9.8 million acres of forests were lost in the Philippines from 1934 to 1988. Illegal logging occurs in the Philippines and intensified flood damage in some areas from 1900 to 2010. Philippine forest decline. Next is degradation of water quality. Water pollution occurs when harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, contaminate a stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other body of water, degrading the water quality and rendering it toxic to human or the environment? As the water becomes polluted, its quality is degrading, leading to a common serious problem like scarcity of clean and fresh water. So, this is the effect of degradation of water quality. The quality of fresh water at any point on the landscape reflects that combined effect of many processes along water pathways. Human activities on all spatial scales affect both water quality and quantity. So next topic is major sources of water pollution. Terrestrial runoff to ensure waters, mining, and industrial processes which may create toxic effluents. Oil spills, accumulation of plastics, and the bioaccumulation of persistent organic chemicals, untreated domestic and industrial wastewater. Only 5% of the total pollution is connected to the sewer network. The vast majority uses flush toilets connected to septic tanks. Since sludge treatment and disposal facilities are rare, most effluents are discharged without treatment. So this is the way to prevent water pollution. First one is pick up a litter and throw it away in a garbage can. Number 2 is blow or sweep fertilizer back into the grass if it gets into paved areas. And lastly is wash your car or outdoor equipment where it can flow to a gravel or grassy area instead of a street. So next is scarcity of fresh water. Besides the pollution of fresh water sources, there are a variety of other reasons for a scarcity of fresh water for drinking in many parts in the world, many of which are related to poor water resource management practices. For instance, the over-abstraction of water from rivers results in water shortage and problem of sanitization downstream. Irrigation practices may also be responsible for the depletion of local water sources and the salinization of irrigated land. Vast differences in water security exists at the global scale, reflecting both demand for fresh water and the scale of public and private investment in water supplies, treatment, and distribution. Now, I will give you the example of scarcity of fresh water. Often economic water scarcity arises from multiple factors in combination. A classic example of this is the Mexico City, home to more than 20 million people in its metropolitan area. Nearly half of the municipal water supply is taken unsustainably from the aquifer system under the city. Next is this is the last topic I will discuss to you, the climate change. One of the most pressing environmental issues impacting the Philippines is climate change. As an island country located in the Southeast Asia Pacific region, the Philippines is extremely vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Some of this impact include increased frequency and severity of natural disasters, sea level rise, extreme rainfall, global warming, resource shortage, and environmental information about climate change in the Philippines. Increased frequency of extreme weather events, The Philippines lies in world's most cyclone region, averaging 19 to 20 cyclones each year, of which 7 to 9 make landfall. So, that's all. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, I'm Jomelyn C. Taktay from BSED 2C and I was assigned to discuss the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is the process that occurs when the gases in Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat. So this process makes Earth much warmer than it would be without an atmosphere. So it is basically a natural process that has significant impact on the temperature on Earth. So however, human activities are changing Earth's natural greenhouse effect. So burning fossil fuels like coal and oil puts more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere and increase its concentration. So when we say greenhouse effect, it refers to the steady increase in the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere due to the process of the greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and etc. So, greenhouse gases are those gases in the atmosphere that have an influence on the Earth's energy balance. So, most greenhouse gases can have either a natural or an anthropogenic man-made source. So, first is carbon dioxide. So, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gases, thus it traps energy at the Earth's surface and increased amount of it increase the greenhouse effect. So next is methane. So methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. So it is able to absorb far more heat than carbon dioxide. And methane is made of one carbon and four hydrogen atoms. And last is nitrous oxide. So nitrous oxide enhance the greenhouse effect just a carbon dioxide, thus by capturing radiated infrared radiation from the Earth's surface and subsequently warming the troposphere, which is the lower atmosphere. So next is greenhouse effect diagram. So solar radiation hits the Earth's surface and in turn Earth radiates the energy back into space. So some gases of the atmosphere traps some of the outgoing energy and retain heat. So this causes to an increase in the global temperature and also cause subsequent changes in the weather pattern. So gases which trap the heat energy are known as greenhouse gases. So all greenhouse gases are positive radiative forcing agents and are capable of disturbing the energy balance in the atmosphere. So as you can see in the diagram, the sun's energy reaches the Earth's atmosphere. Some of it is reflected back to space and some is absorbed and radiated by greenhouse gases. So it works by converting light energy into the heat energy. So light rays from the sun enter the greenhouse where they are absorbed by plants and objects and converted to heat. So greenhouses can get too hot, which is why many have windows, vents, or fans to release hot air as needed. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Hi again, I'm back. My name is Jason Julian Tibay, and let's talk about topic 3, which is global warming and climate change. So I know most of you or all of you are familiar with this. So global warming and climate change. So it is referred to increase in average global temperature. Natural events such as forest fires, volcanic eruption, methane release from thawing of permafrost on the ocean floor, and release of methane gas from cattle. Wetlands and anthropogenic sources exhaust from all kinds of combustions industrial productions of greenhouse gases, nature waterlogging activities such as paddy cultivations, artificial wetlands, and deforestation. So those are the effects of global warming and climate change. Effects of climate change. Following are the potential future effects of global climate change according to the NASA Global Climate Change. These effects scientists has predicted in the past would result from global climate change are now occurring. Temperature will continue to rise. Dry and wet season will lengthen. Changes in precipitation patterns, more droughts and heat waves. Hurricanes will become stronger and more intense. Sea level will rise 1 to 8 feet by 2100. Arctic likely to become ice-free. So the rest of the world experience climate change from excessive heat due to the continuity of high temperature that causes droughts. Also, it affects and lengthens the dry and wet season. Weather is also unpredicted, like in the morning, it's super hot, and later it will rain. And the most devastated is that typhoons are much intense or stronger, leading to damaging infrastructure and uprooting many trees. Not only that, but also Arctic become ice free due to high temperature. Evidences of rapid climate change. First is the global temperature rise. The planet average surface temperature has risen about 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century, a change driven largely by increased carbon dioxide and other human-made emissions into the atmosphere. Most of the warming occurred in the past 35 years, with the six warmest years on the record taking place since 2014. Not only was 2016 the warmest year on the record, but 8 of the 12 months that make up the year from January through September, with the exceptions of June, were the warmest on record for those respective months. So because of the global temperature rise, droughts of lands are being experienced, causes in decreasing crops and demanding for more water supply for farmers. Also, heat stroke are being experienced by the elderly or the human and also the animals. Animals are also declining because of the excessive heat that they experience and also the loss of habitat and migration. Warming oceans. The oceans have absorbed much of this increased heat, with the top 700 meters or about 2,300 feet of ocean showing warming of more than 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit since 1969. So warming of oceans um, contribute to rise happens because of the high temperature or rising temperature causes, or it may cause coral bleaching and loss of breeding grounds for marine fishes and mammals. Coral bleaching is when a coral loses its color and turn white, expelling algae. So algae is very important to the production of oxygen, which support aquatic food web. Shrinking of ice sheets. The Greenland and the Arctic ice sheets have decreased in mass. Data from the NASA Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment shows Greenland lost an average of 286 billion tons of ice per year between 1993 and 2016, while Antarctica lost about 127 billion tons of ice per year during the same time period. The rate of Antarctica ice mass loss has tripled in the last decade. So, because of the high temperature, also ice are melting down slowly, and it contributes to the rising of sea levels and loss of habitats for the animals that lives there, especially penguins. They live in those kind of climate. Also, seals, polar bears, glacial retreat. Glacial or glaciers are retreating almost everywhere around the world, including the Alps, Himalayas, Andes or Andes, Rockies, Alaska, and Africa. So, glacial retreat happens when the ice melts. Landslide falling into glacial lakes may cause tsunamis and river floods, and thus pose a hazard to people that live around there. Decrease of snow cover. So, satellite observation revealed that the amount of spring snow cover in the northern hemisphere has decreased over the past 5 decades or 50 years, and that the snow is melting earlier. So, snow covers, for those of you you don't know, that snow cover reflects about 80 to 90% of sun's energy back into the atmosphere, allowing it to help regulate the exchange of heat between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere, thereby cooling the planet. So because of, again, high temperature or global warming and climate change, the decrease of snow cover has been happened or has been recorded to decrease over the past 5 decades. Sea level rise. So global sea level rose about 8 inches in the last century. The rate in the last 2 decades, however, it is nearly double that of the last century, and it is accelerating slightly every year. So sea level rise. It is a causes of a high level of the sea, causes flooding to low-lying areas, also sinking of lands and ice melting. So it happens also because the ice from the um, Arctic are being melt, or it melts slowly. So some of the lands are sinking and causes flooding to low-lying areas. Declining of Arctic sea ice. So both the extent and thickness of Arctic sea ice has declined rapidly over the last several decades. So declining of Arctic sea ice cause, sadly, the animals that live there um, lost its habitats. That that most of them are thriving there, and also it disrupts the normal ocean circulation. Sea level would rise about 700 or 70 meters when the ice melts. So 70 meters or 230 feet, making lowland sunk with water all over the globe. Extreme events. So the number of record high temperature events in the United States has been increasing, while the number of record low temperature events has been decreasing since 1950. The US, or the United States, has also witnessed increased numbers of intense rainfall events, not only US but also here in the Philippines. Do you remember the Super Typhoon Yolanda? So extreme event happens because too much heat content of the ocean can produce intense typhoon, because warmer sea surface generally provides more energy for storm to develop, or the development of the storm, and thus favors higher intensification intensification rates and more intense typhoon happens. Land degradation and contamination. So human actions have caused many large areas of land to lose or reduce their capacity to support life forms and ecosystems. This is known as the land degradation. Though that land degradation can result from many factors and land pollution is only one of them. Land contamination occurs as a result of chemical and radioactive pollution, especially by long-lived chemical species that enters the soil. Land contamination may cause profound ecological effects and present severe constraints to development, since contaminated land must typically be rehabilitated before it's safe to use for agriculture again, construction, or recreation. The main source of our food is from the land. So if the land um, will continue to be contaminated and degrade its quality, our food production will be affected. And also, more and more people and also animals might die because of the lack of source or because of the lack of source of food. Land use change and habitat loss may also happen. So these issues overlap with others such as deforestation, but they are broader and include the clearance of the forest for agriculture and pastoralism, the transformations of land during urban growth, the development of the new infrastructure such as roads, the drainage of wetlands and destructions of destructions and removal of coastal mangrove forests. Biodiversity, biodiversity loss. Biodiversity means the variety of life in all its forms, levels, and combinations. With a great number of biodiversity of variations of animals, we can expect that wildlife or animals living in the nature also increases. Biodiversity is under serious threat as a result of human activities such as loss of animals, habitat, hunting, exploitation of selected species, habitat fragmentation, collections for zoo and research, introductions of exotic species, pollution, control of pests and predators, and also on natural calamities. So, go back to that. All of the effects or all of that effects that I mentioned earlier, the warming of oceans, global temperature, climate change, glacial retreats, snow cover, rising of sea levels, declining of Arctic sea ice, and extreme events, all of that are effects contribute to the biodiversity loss. We are all, or where all the living things are under series of threat, like animals from land, sea, and aerial. It is it happens or it's due to our way of um, living. So our efforts to live the way we want cause loss of many lives. So what we have to do is to save our earth because it is what we all have in common. It is our home. Maybe someday you find a tree to spend some time, but all of them are gone. Always remember, progress is impossible with change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Again, my name is Justin Jun Tibay. The next is the environmental management, which is will be discussed by Mr. Torres. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'm Kyle Torres from BSED2C. and today I will be discussing the topic environmental management under the Unit 8. So let's begin with environmental management. So environmental management deals with the regulation, process, and protection of the health of our planet by promoting human behaviors that make a positive impact on the natural environment. So environmental management is a purposeful activity with the goal to maintain and improve the safety of an environmental resource affected by human activities. Its role is to identify, solve, and alleviate environmental issues such as pollution and waste treatment in compliance with environmental legislation and to ensure corporate sustainable development. Environmental management also attempts to safeguard and maintain ecosystem services and biodiversity for equitable use by future generations, as well as to maintain ecosystem integrity as a goal in of itself, by taking into account ethical, economical, and scientific elements. Environmental management is to understand the elements at play in potential conflicts arising from meeting requirements while safeguarding the environment. So the next one is the Philippine Clean Air Act. Republic Act number 8749, otherwise known as the Philippine Clean Air Act, is a comprehensive air quality management policy and program which aims to achieve and maintain healthy air for all Filipinos. Lifted from Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So this act shall be known as the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, Section 2, Declaration of Principles. The state shall protect and advance the right of the people to a balance and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. The passage of the Philippine Clean Air Act is to provide a comprehensive air pollution control policy, as it outlines the government's measure to reduce air pollution by including environmental protection activities into its development plans. The Act establishes federal standards for mobile sources of air pollution and their fuels and for sources of 187 hazardous air pollutants. It also establishes a cap-and-trade program for the emissions that cause acid rain. And it also establishes a comprehensive permit system for all major sources of air pollution. All sources of air pollution such as cars, vans, and jeepneys must comply with the provisions of the law. All emissions must be within the air quality standards. Let's proceed to solid waste management. So solid waste management is the collecting, treating, and disposing of solid materials that is discarded because it has served its purpose or is no longer useful. There are 8 methods of solid waste disposal management. The first one is the solid waste open burning. It is the burning of unwanted material in the open air where smoke and toxic fumes are released into the atmosphere directly. The burnt material is released unregulated and in its raw form into the atmosphere. Yet, this method has a negative effects. Materials such as plastics have some toxic chemicals which once predisposed in the air, pose not only a danger to the environment but also become a health concern for life. Number 2. Sea dumping process. Sea dumping process is the deliberate disposal of hazardous waste at sea from vessels, aircrafts, platforms, or other human-made structures. It includes ocean incineration and disposal into the seabed and subseabed. So, dumping waste at sea might appear nothing but negative effect, causing pollution and threatening marine ecosystems. The result of dumping waste at sea can cause water pollution, which could cause heavy rains and floods with bunch of trash. So the third one is the solid waste sanitary landfills. It is a method of controlled disposal of municipal solid waste on land. The main advantage of this is Burying can produce energy and can be obtained by the conversion of landfill gas. Yet, this kind of method can pollute air, water, and soil. So, number 4, incineration method. Incineration method is a method of waste treatment involving the burning of organic materials found in waste. Incineration and other high-temperature waste management processes are called thermal treatment, where it involves converting waste materials into ash, flue gas, and heat. So, the advantages of this is that incinerators can decrease the quantity of waste by 95% and reduce the solid quantity of the original waste by 80 to 85% depending on the components that were in solid waste. Another one is the incineration plants generate energy from waste that can be used to generate electricity or heat. Yet, the main disadvantages of this method is the installation of an incineration plant is very expensive and it pollutes environment and damages public health. Number 5, composting processes. Composting processes is a form of waste disposal where organic waste decomposes naturally under oxygen-rich conditions. This process is used to improve soil structure through the condition of carbon and provide plant nutrients. The benefits of this is it enriches soil. It helps retaining moisture and suppress plant diseases and pests. It reduces the needs for chemical fertilizers and it encourages the production of beneficial bacteria and fungi that break down organic matter to create humus, which a rich nutrient-filled material. Then disposal by hog feeding. It is a process where waste are fed to hogs. So the impacts of this is it can spread many diseases such as hog cholera, foot and mouth disease, and African swine fever and swine vesicular disease to other livestock or humans when uncooked or unheated wastes are fed to hogs. And lastly, number 8 is salvaging procedure. So salvaging procedure is a type of method where materials such as metal, paper, glass, rugs, and certain types of plastics can be salvaged, recycled, and reused. So let's proceed to the last part of the discussion, which is the Philippine Clean Water Act. So the Philippine Clean Water Act of 2004 aims to protect the country's water bodies from pollution from land-based sources such as industries and commercial establishments, agriculture, and community or household activities. It provides for a comprehensive and integrated strategy to prevent and minimize pollution through a multi-sectoral and participatory approach involving all the stakeholders. It is an act providing for a comprehensive water quality management and for other purposes. And this act provides for the abatement and control of pollution from land-based sources and lays down water quality standards and regulations. Management of water quality will either be based on watershed, river basis, or water resources region. Water quality management areas with similar hydrological, meteorological, or geographic conditions which affect the reaction and diffusion of pollutants in water bodies are to be designated by the DNR in coordination with the National Water Resources Board or NWRB.
As a continuation to our report, I am going to explain the extinction of plant and animal diversity. So first, we have the distribution range, which is the smaller the range of distribution, the greater the threat of extinction. Next is degree of specialization. So the more specialized an organism is, the more vulnerable it is to extinction. So third is the position of the organism in the food chain. So we have the position of organism in our food chain. The higher the organism in the food chain, the more susceptible it becomes. And last is the reproductive rate. So large organisms tend to produce fewer offsprings at widely intervals. Is we have environmental issues. So these are the environmental issues we are facing today. So first is the population growth. So we know and we have knowledge that we are overpopulated. So the total human population has expanded since the introduction of agriculture around 12,000 years ago. And its rate of growth has generally increased over time, largely as a result of increased food production and improved sanitation and health care. So the total human population was around 5.9 billion in 1998. It currently far exceeds 6 billion people and is expected have reached 9.4 billion people by 2050. So the increasing human population inevitably places greater demands on the natural environment. So for habitat, resources, and waste assimilation. Although the extent to which the human population explosions is driving environmental degradation is a complex and controversial question. Next issue is urbanization. So the issue of urbanization is indirectly related to that of population growth, since urbanization is occurring in response to increasing population pressures in rural areas and to increasing concentration of economic opportunities in cities, often in so-called megacities. So megacities is the city with population exceeding 10 million people. So urbanization is often associated with a range of social and environmental problems including overcrowding, congestion, pollution, public health issues, shortages of water for drinking, and inadequate sanitation. Next is poverty. So we all know what is poverty. So whilst poverty is complex and problematic to define, so the persistence of poverty at all levels from intra-household to global represents an ongoing challenge as acknowledged in most current development policies, initiatives, and targets such as the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Vast differences in patterns of income, production, and consumption are evident at all spatial scales, and those patterns are reflected in distinctive patterns of environmental impact. Although, in some cases, environmental impacts are exported, as in the case of radioactive waste that is generated in the country before being transported to another for processing or disposal. So next issue is food insecurity. In general, the rate of increase in total food production has exceeded that of total population growth over recent decades, mainly due to improvements in agricultural practices and in water management techniques. However, the average values conceal enormous differences in the distribution and quality of food, and lack of food security remains a profound challenge in many parts of the world. So debates about food production raise important environmental issues such as the use of genetically modified and genetically engineered seeds and produce. So next issue is disease. So we must know, or we all know, what are disease, and we are facing one disease today, which is the coronavirus. Closely related to issues of poverty and food insecurity are problems of disease due to malnutrition, scarcity of water for drinking, poor sanitation, pollution, and inadequate shelter. Those are often compounded by the spread of infectious disease such as malaria, cholera, tuberculosis, and HIV or AIDS. Large differences occurs in the responses of human societies to diseases, reflecting vast inequalities in health care spending and in funding for pharmaceutical and medical researches. So next is peak oil and energy security. So peak oil refers to the time of which maximum crude oil extraction occurs, after which the economically viable reserves become depleted and the rate of oil extraction declines. So, some estimates suggest that peak oil will occur or has already occurred early in the 21st century, with the implication that alternative energy sources will need to be developed in sufficient time to serve as a substitute for oil. So regardless of the accuracy or of prediction about peak oil, the issues of climate change and conflict respectively are now driving debates about green, decarbonized or renewable energy sources and energy security. So conflict and displacement. So conflict between human societies continues to create severe environmental degradation in addition to human misery and a wide range of social impacts. For instance, the use of depleted uranium munitions causes significant land contamination, whilst the effects of the displacement of large numbers of people from zones of conflict can exert pressures on adjacent ecosystems. Displacement of people does not occur only in response to violence. Globally, the effects of climate change are projected to result in the displacement of as many as 500 million environmental refugees. So those are the environmental issues we are facing today. So first, we have the population growth. Next is urbanization, poverty, and food insecurity. Next is disease and peak oil and energy security. And lastly, the conflict and displacement.
Radioactivity. According to John Rasmussen of University of California, radioactivity is property exhibited by certain types of matter of emitting energy and subatomic particles spontaneously. It is in essence an attribute of individual atomic nuclei. In radioactive processes, particles or electromagnetic radiation are emitted from the nucleus. The most common forms of radiation emitted have been traditionally classified as alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. Nuclear radiation occurs in other forms including the emission of protons or neutrons or spontaneous fission of a massive nucleus. So, radioactivity refers to the particles which are emitted from nuclei as a result of nuclear instability. Because the nucleus experiences the intense conflict between the two stronger forces in nature, it should not be surprising that there are many nuclear isotopes which are unstable and emit some kind of radiation. The most common types of radiation are called alpha, beta, and gamma. But there are several other varieties of radioactive decay. So, source of radiation. A. Mining. Handling and processing of radioactive materials, handling and storage of radioactive waste. B. The use of radioactive reactions to generate energy, along with the use of radiation in medicine and research. C. Microwaves, cell phones, radio transmitters, wireless devices, computers, and commodities also contributes to our exposure to radiation. So last, nuclear power plants and as basic components of nuclear weapons. Radiation from nuclear sources is distributed equally in all directions, obeying the inverse square law. So the majority of background radiation occurs naturally from minerals and a small fraction comes from man-made elements. Naturally occurring radioactive minerals in the ground, soil, and water produce background radiation. The human body even contains some of these naturally occurring radioactive minerals. So, the composition of the Earth's crust is a major source of natural radiation.
The main contributors are natural deposits of uranium, potassium, and thorium, which, in the process of natural decay, release small amounts of ionizing radiation.
Effects of radiation. Depending on the amount of radiation to which we are exposed and the sensitivity of each exposed person, the effects of radioactive pollution can vary significantly between individuals. While the exposure to high amounts of radiation generates almost immediately chronic diseases, cancer, or even sudden death in rare cases of extreme pollution. Small amounts of radiation can cause diseases that are not so serious and develop over the course of time. The risk of developing cancer increases with a dose of radiation, but lower doses of radiation can also cause cancer after years of exposure. Genetic inheritance plays an important role in how sensitive an individual may be to radiation-based pollution. However, any amount of radiation may cause cancer, and any exposure to radiation may cause some health risks. Thus, it is always safer to minimize as much as possible the exposure to radiation. So, radiation is defined as the energy which travels through space in the form of waves or particles. Radiation can be either ionizing or non-ionizing. Based on this, following are the example of radiation. Non-ionizing radiation examples: radio waves, microwaves, visible light, infrared light, light from the sun, and lasers. And the example of ionizing radiation is X-rays, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, ultraviolet light, and cosmic rays. That's all. Thank you.